Welcome to Digital in Place, the show for planners and urbanists who want to know what the technology on the horizon actually means for the work at your desk. I'm Adam Beck. If this is useful, follow along the Neon Urban LinkedIn page and also the Digital in Place YouTube channel. So this is a quick, rapid turnaround episode because something has just happened in Australia that I've been anticipating for years now. Don't get alarmed, but the robots have arrived. Serve Robotics, which is the footpath delivery company which was spun out of Uber in 2021, has just been granted an agreement to pilot, yes, deploy on the Gold Coast here in southeast Queensland in Australia. This is not a concept. This is not a conference where there's a demo. This is robots on Queensland footpaths. This isn't a surprise as much as it is an arrival. Serve has had Australia on its public hit list for quite some time, since 2026 and 27. It's been happening around the world and other places. But what matters here is that why we want to talk about it is the next 12 months are really going to count. Why? Well, here's the thing about first pilots, as we know. They set the template. Whatever gets agreed on the Gold Coast, in reality, in terms of where these things can operate, how fast, what the operator has to report, who carries the cost, what becomes documented, every other council is going to be looking for that. We don't write these things twice, which means the window to shape is when the pilot is happening and not after. And what I want to be clear about that I think is there is an upside that's generally worth aiming for. So let me give you an example. Leeds City Council in the UK has been running a robot delivery service with Co-op and Starship technology since 2022. The council reported the service covered around about 58,000 kilometres. It put that at about equivalent of more than 35,000 car kilometres that have been taken off the road, around about 6,000 kilograms of carbon which has been removed. My favourite figure here in their report is that the average robot delivery used about as much energy as boiling a kettle for a single cup of tea. So think what we do now. We move a 2 kilogram ramen in a bag in a 2-ton car. So swapping some of those trips for something that is electric, is quiet, it moves around about at walking pace, that's quite a good outcome for a street. Is it not? I suppose that's something that we can argue at another time. Of course, we'll debate that, I'm sure. But the benefit only lands if the street works, the footpath width, the ramps from the footpath, the crossing design, where the depot goes, whether a wheelchair user can get past one of these robots. So that's our work as urbanists and city shapers right now. And the Gold Coast is about to go live and navigate these things. So let me share sort of, a bit of a primer, some insights around what we need to know. So firstly, this sector has a name for these robots. They're called Public Area Mobile Robots, or PMRs. There's an international standard series that's being developed right now. ISO 4448. It's been developed through the International Standards Organization, ISO. Technical Committee 204, Working Group 19, is building this series of standards out. Part 1 was published in 2024, so we already have some standards. That original Part 1 standard covers operational concepts and safety. Part 1 contains what I'd call the best design brief that we've probably got for this agenda. It notes that PMR deployment is the first time in human history that machines have been designed to operate without a human attendant nearby, and they're moving among bystanders who, I quote, are inattentive, uninvolved, unprotected, and untrained. Now, I don't want that to be alarmist. More than anything, it's a specification. It tells you exactly what the footpath has to absorb in what's going on. And Part 1 lists what this touches, for example, safety, accessibility, existing social rights, vulnerable road users, adequacy of infrastructure, street and pavement design, crossing design, pedestrian flow. I hope you're getting a sense of who needs to be in the room as we evolve this agenda. So every one of those issues sits in a planning or design related place, whether it be local government or private sector. Now, there's three things I want to identify that we need to keep a watching brief on as this pilot rolls out on the Gold Coast. First, there's a regulatory picture. I'm not a regulatory expert, but I know that in Queensland, a personal mobility device is defined around a rider, a device that is designed for use by one person only. Now, a delivery robot has no rider. So that's an existing category that doesn't necessarily fit. And that's a gap worth filling deliberately and in a considered way rather than retrofitting later on. But again, I reiterate, I'm not an expert on the regulatory matters. Councils aren't powerless here either. Queensland's own guidance says that councils and landowners can prohibit devices in places like pedestrian malls and esplanades and jetties and things like that. And it tells people to contact their council about local laws. So that lever does exist. On the second item I wanted to highlight is there's already a good model to copy. In Hertfordshire, in the UK, the council has mapped, geofenced a trial area against safety, accessibility, rights of way, land ownership. They did that all before a single robot moved around as part of the pilot. And of course, the operator and what their involvement is also worked out. In Vancouver, just in May this year, a 6-month pilot was approved. And in that case, council is retaining the power to extend or end the pilot, of course. And their debate covered things like pedestrians, delivery workers, and people with disabilities, which I think is a really solid scope to start with. Third, what I'd also say is that where I'd put most money, most effort, most energy is around accessibility. Campaigners in the UK made the point well that a robot programmed to stay on the footpath can end up boxing in, for example, a wheelchair user where there is no dropped curb nearby, or a blind person that has a guide dog that's been trained not to step into the road. That's all solvable with effective width standards and passing opportunities. That's core practice for us as planners and urban designers, but we need to set that out up front. Related and squarely for me a planning question is the depot and its land use. There have been instances where campaigners say that a robot hub or a depot, for example in Sheffield, it went to a scout hut to be occupied, and there was no notification to residents, ward councillors, or the council's own transport and planning officers. So there was a planning enforcement investigation that was opened up, entirely avoidable with a clear pathway. Things like that we need to avoid. And here's the Australian footnote in this conversation. In late 2017, Australia Post ran a 4-week footpath robot trial in New Farm in Brisbane. It ran for more than 140 kilometres. It delivered over 100 parcels. There were no technical or safety incidents. So we somewhat proved the concept 9 years ago. But now the Gold Coast is where we finally build out the framework around it. So here's my final point. 4 things that I think we need to think about ASAP, all of us. Number 1, work out who in your organization would receive a proposal like this. Serve has been engaging, for example, with a number of local authorities around Australia. And Serve Robotics is not the only footpath delivery company as well. But where's the request going to go? Who's at the table? City infrastructure, local planning and regulation, economic development, planning? Is it the mayor's office, like in Gold Coast's instance? Getting that clear now potentially saves everyone a bit of grief later on. Item number 2, make sure you're across those local laws over public places and see whether it contemplates an unattended commercial device operating in the road reserve. If it doesn't, that's a short and very useful piece of work that needs to be done. Item number 3, decide what a robot delivery depot or service centre is under your planning scheme before anyone asks you. And the fourth and final point, I would say, is the where. Where would you consider a pilot to be an opportunity for your city, for a neighbourhood, for a precinct, where it can contribute economic and social well-being value? And or, like in the Gold Coast's case, how does this fit with your innovation agenda and your agenda for investment attraction? So none of that is necessarily hard, fingers crossed. It's just work that typically we haven't been asked to do yet. If you want to go deeper in this, I recommend reading chapter 6 of a paper by the Urban Robotics Foundation, just published a couple of months ago. It was written with ASTM International and Mass Robotics and contributions from NIST in the US. Chapter 6 is written for planners, infrastructure and spatial readiness, land use and integration, equity and community engagement. That resource is free. And probably the best opportunity is to come along to a webinar that I'll be hosting on Thursday, the 20th of August for the Urban Robotics Foundation. It's running from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to be hosting a panel. It's going to include Yariel Diaz, who is the Director of Government Affairs and Accessibility at Serve Robotics, based out of Dallas in the United States. And also urbanist Sarah Stace will be joining us. She's Director of Cities at Vivendi Consulting. So we now have an Australian pilot that we can start to talk about, which makes that hour a lot more interesting. If you're keen to register, head to the Urban Robotics Foundation website, urbanroboticsfoundation.org. The white paper, you can also access that there, and the core argument within it is that the barrier here isn't the technology, it's not the robotics, it's government readiness. That's us, which means it's ours to get right. So that's Digital in Place for now. As always, exciting and interesting times to be in the city shaping business. Follow Neon Urban on LinkedIn and the Digital in Place YouTube channel, and head to neonurban.com for more. See you next time.